Welcome everyone. Welcome everyone. Welcome everyone to another Ref Brandon and the Todd Family YouTube video. Wherever you are, whatever you may be doing, thank you so much for making Ref Brandon and the Todd Family a part of your day. We always greatly appreciate it. Today we're going to be talking a lot more college football stuff. But before I get into that, let me say I've got a shout out coming up at the end of the video. So please stay tuned for that. I always enjoy doing my shout outs for our new subscribers. And if you have any comments about anything I'm going to discuss today, please feel free to let me know. I always enjoy reading your comments and responding to as many people as I can. Sometimes I can respond to everybody, sometimes I can't, but I do certainly read all the comments and I try to respond to everybody. I always enjoy getting the feedback. But the first thing I'm going to talk about today, I actually mentioned yesterday, but I didn't go into detail about it yesterday. So today I'm going to go into detail about it only because somebody that I work with who happens to be a Miami fan asked me why I hate the SEC so much. And I told him that I don't like any conference. I'm not a conference waiver. I never have been. If you follow this channel, you know I'm a Clemson fan. What the rest of the ACC does not mean diddly squat to me. So I don't like any conference. But the reason why I hate the SEC so much is because of the fact if somebody in their conference does something good, they want to tell you about it. But if somebody in their conference does something bad or embarrassing, they don't mention it. So to me, it comes across as a bunch of hypocrisy. But yesterday I mentioned that South Carolina was the last SEC East team to beat Alabama. And that was in 2010 when they had Steve Spurrier and all that great talent. So 11 years, that's more than 20 teams because they play Tennessee every single year, and then of course it rotates the other team, and then of course the conference championship game, which is normally Florida and Georgia, who are supposed to be two great teams. So you've had 11 years, probably, I would say, counting the conference championship game, probably 30 chances to beat Alabama, and you can't do it. But Clemson, who supposedly plays in the weak ACC, who is no good and they're complete garbage, has actually beat Alabama twice. So the fact that nobody in the SEC East has beaten Alabama in 11 years never gets brought up. It never gets mentioned. And you know why? Because it makes the SEC East look bad. And you want to know why the SEC East was voted the worst Power 5 division in football a few years back? That's your reason. You want to know why everybody calls it the SEC least? That's your reason. Which leads me to my next topic, which is, does Georgia belong in the playoffs? And this is not my question. I don't care if they make it or not. Clemson didn't make it, so I ain't got a dog in the fight. But I have heard a lot of people ever since Saturday, some non-Georgia fans, and some even are Georgia fans. I've had a bunch of Georgia fans tell me in the last 3 days that they don't think Georgia belongs in the playoffs. And some just said it's because not only did you lose your conference championship game, but you got embarrassed in your conference championship game. And some have said it's because of the fact that their schedule was pitiful. The best team they beat this year was Clemson, who was 9-3 on a down year. So the best team you beat was a non-conference team who finished 9-3, and it was your best victory. Now, Clemson made the playoffs every year up until this year, and even played for the national championship 4 times, even won the national championship 2 times over Alabama, which is a team that Georgia can't beat. But anyway, I digress. Clemson made it, and almost every year they made it, everybody said, well, Clemson shouldn't be in there because their schedule's terrible. It's awful. But Georgia beats them on a down year, and it's Georgia's best win, and some people think they shouldn't be in the playoffs because of that. Because how can you want to keep Clemson out if you think their schedule is weak, even though they proved on the field that they were the best team, but you want to put Georgia in the playoffs, even though their schedule was weaker than Clemson's schedule when they won 2 national championships. So a lot of people are saying that Georgia does not deserve to be in the playoffs. I personally think they do. Now, they did lose, and they lost pitiful Saturday, and they looked pitiful Saturday. But if I see Georgia play, I still think they're one of the best 4 teams in the country. So I was just asking that to see if anybody has any feedback on that as to whether or not you think they belong in the playoffs, because I know a lot of people that feel like if you lose your conference championship game, you shouldn't be in the playoffs, because to a lot of people, the conference championship game is pretty much a play-in game for the playoffs. Just like, the Major League Baseball now has the wild card game, which is pretty much a play-in game for the playoffs. So a lot of people feel like the conference championship games are a play-in game for the playoffs. So if you lose, you shouldn't make it because you lost your play-in game. And it wasn't just the fact that Georgia lost Saturday. It was the fact that how bad they looked. The game was non-competitive. And now I know a lot of people, including Georgia fans, who are already saying they have no chance at beating Michigan. We'll talk more about that before the game gets here. It's still 3.5 weeks away, but I know a lot of Georgia fans that are saying, you know what, they proved to me Saturday that when push comes to shove and they have to win, Georgia still doesn't show up. So if you have any thoughts on whether or not you think Georgia belongs in the playoffs, please feel free to let me know. Like I said, me personally, if I had a vote, I would put them in because I still think they're one of the best 4 teams. I was just explaining why some people don't feel like they deserve to be in the playoffs, because you want to bash Clemson when they get in, saying that their schedule is weak, even though they proved they were the best team on the field. And yet Georgia's schedule is weaker than the schedule Clemson had, and your best win came against Clemson, who was not any good this year. And then we'll talk about some of the new head coaches. I know I did a video about this last Thursday, but in the video on Thursday, I basically only talked about the big-time programs and the big-time schools. And then I was like, you know what? There's probably somebody out there that's just like me that loves college football and wants to know about every coach and every team, whether they're a Power 5 conference, a Group of 5 conference, or whatever. But Jerry Kill has officially been named the new head coach at New Mexico State. And if you think that name sounds familiar, he used to be the head coach at Northern Illinois. He left there and went to Minnesota, but he actually retired because he was having a problem with seizures. And he's been off of the coaching world for a few years, so he's back at being a head coach at New Mexico State. So hopefully Jerry Kill will be able to stick around this time. And then we have Joe Moorhead, who is the new head coach at Akron. Joe Moorhead, he used to be the offensive coordinator with Penn State, and he left to be the head coach at Mississippi State, and that didn't work out. In the last couple of years, he's been the offensive coordinator at Oregon, and now he's back as a head coach at Akron. And then we have Louisiana, who officially named Michael DeSormo as their new head coach after Billy Napier left to take the job at Florida. Michael DeSormo was already on the staff coaching offense, so he just got promoted to be the new head coach. And then we have Mario Cristobal, in which I think Miami absolutely, completely screwed the pooch with this hire, because if you have watched any Oregon game the past couple of years, they had 2 games this year against Utah where they just looked pitiful and got outplayed. But they had 1 game against Stanford where they just didn't show up. They could have brought their C- game and beat Stanford by 3 touchdowns, but they didn't. But if you follow Oregon, there's at least 2 games every year where they just flat out, for whatever reason, don't show up. Now, Mario Cristobal is a phenomenal recruiter, but the man can't coach. So I think Miami has done a terrible job with getting him, but I'm not surprised because he did play there. He's an alum from there. There's still a rumor going around that Clemson's athletic director, Dan Radakovich, is going to go to Miami. It's not official yet, but it's been rumored ever since Friday. So they hired Mario Cristobal without even having an athletic director. So now if Dan Radakovich does go, what's he going for? Your job is supposed to be to make the hires, and they've already hired the coach in the most prominent sport in collegiate athletics. But they did it completely wrong. Manny Diaz was their coach, and Manny Diaz was their coach until yesterday. They almost had two head coaches at the same time because the only guy they wanted was Mario Cristobal, and they weren't going to fire Manny Diaz unless Mario Cristobal agreed to come. Otherwise, you fire Diaz, you have no athletic director, and then Cristobal decides he's not coming, and you have no coach and nobody to search for a coach because you have no athletic director. So they pretty much waited until Cristobal agreed to the terms of the contract, and right before he signed the contract, they fired Manny Diaz. But if you watch Miami this past year, Miami looked pitiful until about the middle of October. And the last half of the season, they actually played really, really good. So it looked to me like they were a team that was supporting their head coach and wanted to keep their coach around because they could have easily just packed it up and went home, kind of like Florida did with Dan Mullen. But they didn't. I believe they won 5 of their last 6 games after the pitiful start. So it looked to me like they were showing Miami that they wanted to keep Diaz around, but they did fire him and they hired Mario Cristobal, which means Oregon currently has a head coach position open, which means we'll have to do another video coming up here in the next couple of weeks about head coaches, because not only does Oregon have the opening, there's a rumor going around that Chip Kelly is going to leave UCLA to go back to Oregon, which means the UCLA job will be open again. Virginia supposedly is going to name their new head coach as early as tomorrow, but I'm not going to talk about it yet because it has not been made official yet. Duke still has no head coach, and Florida International still has no head coach. They have been coached the last few years by former Miami Hurricane head coach Butch Davis, but they're looking to go in another direction. And then Colorado State officially named Jay Norvell their head coach. He came from Nevada, which means Nevada is also looking for a new head coach. Colorado State actually fired Steve Addazio, and Steve Addazio used to be the coach at Temple, and he left Temple to go to Boston College, and it seemed like he was at Boston College forever, but he never got above 7-5. He'd go 6-6, 7-5, 5-7, 7-5, 6-6, 7-5. So Boston College finally let him go, and he pretty much only coached at Colorado State for 1 year because in 2020 they only played 4 games. So Steve Addazio coached 16 games at Colorado State, and they fired him to bring on Jay Norvell from Nevada. So he is making a small step up in the coaching world, but a step nonetheless. And then our Heisman Trophy finalists, in case you have not heard yet, are Bryce Young, Kenny Pickett, Aiden Hutchinson, and C.J. Stroud. And me personally, I think Bryce Young wrapped it up with that great performance he had Saturday against Georgia. So I'd be stunned if Bryce Young doesn't win it. And since it is the day of the quarterbacks, I think C.J. Stroud will finish in second. And since Pittsburgh doesn't get the love other teams do, I think Kenny Pickett will finish third. And I think since Hutchinson plays defense, even though he had a great season, I think he'll finish in fourth of the 4 Heisman Trophy finalists. Any thoughts on anything I've talked about today, please feel free to let me know. And tomorrow, of course, since it's a Wednesday, will be our weekly top 10 countdown, so please stay tuned for that. My shout out today goes out to Miss Debbie, and Debbie subscribed to the channel last night, and if you ever get on the comment section and read the comments, she actually commented last night. Like, as soon as she subscribed, she commented, and I love that. I want people that are not only going to subscribe, but are going to watch videos and are going to comment, because it makes what I do so much better and so much funner. And Debbie is actually an administrator for a Facebook group that is all about college football talk. So Miss Debbie, thank you so much for subscribing. She lives in Alabama, so of course she is a Alabama fan, and I enjoy having fans of every team in college football on here. So Debbie, again, thank you so much for subscribing, and if you do so choose to comment on any video at any time, you will be eligible for our 1,000 subscriber giveaway that we'll be having when we get to 1,000 subscribers. Let's go ahead and get our dad joke of the day in here. My dad told me a joke about boxing. I guess I missed the punchline. And that wraps it up for today's Ref Brandon and the Todd Family YouTube video. Until next time, it's Ref Brandon saying, just like in pro wrestling, life can be over by the count of 3. Tell your friends and family how much you love them. Bye.